Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I tell you, folks, I said this long before it even became negotiated. Even before Joe Biden pretended he was Superman flying around the world making deals happen. The nuclear deal with Iran was the worst possible thing the United States could do. Isolation was the only thing that was working. Engagement with them made them feel like credible world powers and would make them mock the United States for doing it. There's no reward for this. There's no reward for stupidity. And proof is in the pudding. Fox News just released an interesting story about this.
Well, Iran agreeing to a start date for the interim nuke deal. It struck in November with the U.S. and 5 other world powers. Next Monday, Iran says it will begin scaling back its nuclear program for at least 6 months, including eliminating some of its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. The news comes as the White House battles Congress over increased sanctions against Tehran. Joining us now, Mark Dubowitz, Executive Director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Mark, you've been a critic of this deal in the past. What do you think of what you've seen over the last few hours?
Well, Jen, I mean, the deal has some positive aspects to it, but it has some major loopholes that the Iranians are going to exploit over the next 6 months. So as one example, it allows Iran to continue actually doing research and development on advanced centrifuges, on second, third, fourth, fifth generations of centrifuges that have no other purpose than to build a nuclear weapon and enrich weaponized uranium. They can still actually do research and development on this over the next 6 months and be in a position to have significant nuclear leverage when it comes time to negotiate a final deal. So a deal riddled with flaws and loopholes.
Here's what Secretary Kerry says about the deal. He says, we've taken a critical, significant step towards reaching a verifiable resolution that prevents Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. So you're saying that it doesn't prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon in the long run?
Well, Jen, actually, and not only am I saying that, but actually the deputy nuclear negotiator and the deputy foreign minister of Iran has said to his people on TV, this is a reversible deal. We will never dismantle one single centrifuge. We will continue to insist on Iran's rights to enrichment. And he's signaling to his people that they have every intention of continuing to do what they've done for years, which is engage in nuclear mendacity with the objective of building a nuclear weapon.
Interesting that the Washington Post phrases it as the world's best chance. And this is the way they're describing the way the administration feels about it. They're saying that their administration feels that this is the world's best chance to solve the nuclear program. Obviously, there are folks in Congress that disagree with that want to push the sanctions. And you've been a supporter of more sanctions to come. Why would you want that now? Because the president has been very clear that if any of those sanctions get to his desk, he'll veto them.
Jen, I think the view on the Hill is that Congress has actually passed the toughest sanctions over the past few years that the administration objected to. Congress overrode those objections. It was these tough sanctions that actually worked in getting the Iranians to the negotiating table. And then the administration actually embraced these tough sanctions and thanked Congress for their help in giving U.S. negotiators increased leverage. Now, the fact of the matter is I think Congress feels vindicated. They feel that the administration was wrong in opposing sanctions over the past few years, and they believe it's only sanctions and increased negotiating leverage that have any chance of resolving this problem peacefully and preventing either an Iranian nuclear weapon or Israeli military strikes to forestall that possibility.
Well, it'd be interesting to see where those sanctions go now in Congress, in the legislature, especially in the Senate. I'm curious, your foundation put together a report about what has happened over the last several months when the talk of this interim nuclear deal started, and that maybe we'd already provide some relief on the sanctions. It's interesting that the New York Times really dives deep into Iran as the #1 state sponsor of terror and where they're using their money in different areas of the Middle East. So, Mark, can you go a little bigger on that part of it? Because we're so focused on the nuclear deal. What does the nuclear deal mean, potentially, for funds and where they're headed across the Middle East and what Iran is doing with that money?
Well, right, Jen. I mean, the problem with this deal is, number one, we're giving billions of dollars back to Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and there's no restrictions on that money being used to actually fund terrorism against Americans or actually continue to build Iran's nuclear program, the very program we're trying to stop. The second fundamental problem, as a result of these negotiations and this new era of diplomacy with Iran, the Iranian economy is recovering. It's back on its feet. We've seen GDP growth rates go from -6% to positive territory, inflation cut in half. In other words, the Iranian economy is generating tens of billions of dollars of renewed economic activity as a result of the sanctions relief and a climate of de-escalating sanctions. That's a more powerful economy, and an economy in a more powerful country that's actually exploiting that power across the region, helping Assad stay in power, helping kill hundreds of thousands of Syrians and others. And this is a regime that is on the march. That's the problem. This is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism that just got billions of dollars to continue funding more terrorism.
Interesting. And the New York Times points out not just Syria, but Yemen and Bahrain, Iraq as well, when you see different Iranian forces at work and the money being put to use. Mark, great to see you as always. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks for having me.
And this is what the president of Iran had to say about it on Twitter. Our relationship with the world is based on Iranian nation's interests. In Geneva Agreement, world power surrendered to Iranian nation's will. That's what the president had to say of Iran Tuesday. Incredible, folks. This is the kind of stuff that's happened. We've emboldened this dictator and really weakened our interests internationally. I'm Kevin Price with The Price of Business. More after this.